Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Great Debaters Contest, where we encourage a battle of wits and not a battle of fists.
We take it a notch higher through informative and intellectual debates here on Kenya's #1 debate platform. This is Season 9 of Western Region, Kakamega County. I am your host, Chris Boru.
And I am Esperanza Kapanga. In today's debate, the motion being debated is, overdependence on natural resources is Africa's greatest undoing.
In the proposition are the gentlemen from Vihiga High School.
And in the opposition, we have Nyangori High School. Proposer number 1, you have 3 minutes to make a statement.
Ladies and gentlemen, today marks a dramatic turn for a predominantly dormant country. Just as the President of United States once said, the future of our country lies beneath the hands of our young ones, who are the coming generation of tomorrow. Who are you guys? So that's why Ronald Reagan strongly proposes this motion that states clearly overdependence on natural resources is Africa's greatest undoing. So before I start, let me demystify for you this motion. What is overdependence? This is the act of over-relying on something, natural resource. These are materials of substance or currency in nature which can be exploited for economic gain. For example, air, water, oil, and forests. And to my first point, exploitation and sale of national resources to the Western corporation has not helped African escape poverty. Why? These resources, also known as paradox of plenty, refers to the paradox that countries with abundance of natural resources, such as fossil fuels and sustained mineral, tend to have less economic growth, less democracy, and worse development outcome than countries with few natural resources. According to www.globalpolicy.org states clearly that Nigeria is the 9th export of petroleum, but you'll find that in this same country, people are living in poverty. Now, the big four question is, where is this money going to? This money is going to the corrupt leaders and the so-called multinational oil production. Secondly, the pollution of forests has led to climate change. Kenya, just like other developing countries, is at the tipping point of global warming. Its high dependency on climate-sensitive agricultural production leaves in a risky position. Due to overproduction of charcoal, that has been an increase in carbon emission, not to talk about deforestation, that lead to cut its carbon emission by 30%. In 2030 is now giving scientists a sleepless night, and already there is increase of frequency of extreme weather in Africa, whereby Kenya is experiencing droughts and famine. But now, this Kenya of ours do not have the climate finance. And I will leave you with the say, Abdul Kalam once said, all birds find shelter during the rain, but the eagle flies above the clouds in order. Problems are common, but attitude makes the difference. Therefore, kindly join us. Thank you.
First proposer, you have 3 minutes to make a submission.
Dun, dararan, darara. That is the sound of your superhero as I put on my superhero cape, ready to save the day from the darkest ways that our proposers are leading us into. I stand before you to champion the true words of wisdom and the greatness of our generation. Adrian Oluoch from the prestigious school of Nyangori Boys High School, ready to firmly oppose the motion that states overdependence on natural resources is Africa's greatest undoing. First, I'd like to remind you that Nigeria is not the 9th producer of petroleum in the world. Nigeria is 11th producer in the world. That is according to the United Nations Energy Statistics Yearbook each and every year. Overdependence is the state of needing the help and support of something in a more than usual way in order to be successful. Natural resources is a supply of something that exists in nature and not human-made that is used by a person or organization to increase wealth, e.g., coal and forest. Greatest, much more than average in degree or quantity. Undoing, the reason why somebody fails at something. Source, the 9th Oxford Learners Dictionary. It has been a blessing. Natural resources is the only thing that is keeping Africa together. If it were not, Africa would have been crumbling in the depths of poverty. On to my first point. Overdependence on natural resources is the biggest spearheader of Africa's economy. Let's take, for example, tourism. Tourism has been actually utilized by African as one of the natural resources. Tourism from our natural resources like wildlife, our beauty scenes, and our sandy beaches. According to the UN WTO tourism highlights of 2013, Morocco made 10 billion US dollars, which has actually helped them to become one of the most richest countries in Africa. And can you tell that natural resources is becoming a curse to Africa? That is irony. According to the United Energy Statistics Yearbook, the same one that says Nigeria was 11th in oil production, it said that South Africa can produce close to 1,800 megawatts of electricity due to what? Uranium. That is natural resource. Uranium. Nuclear power energy. South Africa, the only country in Africa that is actually producing nuclear energy. This is 75% total of the energy. Wouldn't that help them achieve SDG number 7, affordable energy? SDG number 9, innovation, industry, and infrastructure. That is one thing that we have to keep keen. That's our natural resources, but we cannot say they are a curse to Africa, but it is the biggest and the strongest thing that is keeping Africa together today. We have been so blinded by our proposals. We are not seeing the biggest issues that are actually the greatest undoing to Africa. Corruption. Corruption has been the biggest issue. How much money has we been granted to us? There are so many things that we need to focus, so many biggest things, like overdependence on foreign aids and laws, poor leadership, and poverty. Those are the greatest undoing. All I want to tell our proposers is that going in terms with this motion is Shabbat Shalem. Thank you.
Second proposer, you have 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Noble members of this house, I thought we were all sailing in the new ship. But for the last few minutes is when I realized that our opponents are sailing in the old ship that went into exile in the era of Abraham, Moses, and Jacob. Before you is Ray Kahi from Vihiga High School, ready to propose to you this motion that states that overdependence on natural resources is Africa's greatest undoing. But before I do that, my opposers, my first speaker clearly quoted www.globalpolicy.org when we researched less than 3 hours ago. He quoted when he said that Nigeria is the 9th largest producer of oil in the world. You told us they are the 11th largest producer of oil in the world. What source do you have to justify yourselves? On to my first point. So many African countries focus most of their economic attention on only one sector. The Democratic Republic of Congo is one such country. They focus so much on copper mining. Lack of diversity and concentration in one sector has never helped the continent, and for sure, it will never help the Democratic Republic of Congo. There was a time when DRC had the richest president in the world. What is the name of this guy? Mobutu Sese Seko. You can research him if you don't know him. They had the richest president in the world. But right now, according to the research conducted last year by GuyLinio.com, it was clearly stated that the third poorest country in all of Africa is the DRC. Because of lack of diversification, the Democratic Republic of Congo has fallen so much because they focus so much on one trade. Overdependence on natural resources. Take a look at China. China is ranked number 6 in the world as having almost 23 trillion worth of natural resources. But they do not simply rely on these resources alone. When you look at China, they rely on technology. They rely on the skilled manpower that the people in their country provide. And right now, China is termed as one of the growing superpowers in the whole world. How far do you think Africa would be right now had they employed such skills? How far do you think we would have gone had we stopped focusing on only one sector in the market? Randy Morrison once said that there's nothing wrong with change as long as change is in the right direction. But Africa is making no change. Time and time again, we have spoken the same things: over-dependence on natural resources. But simply because we refuse to change our ways, we are going nowhere. In fact, we are even becoming poorer than we were. My people, with all that I've just presented, I'm sure you can see things from my point of view. From Vihiga High School, Rekahi, I rest my case. Thank you.
Second opposer, you have 3 minutes for cross-examination.
Ladies and gentlemen, is China flying? Does she have wings to be located next to Uganda? This motion talks about Africa, ladies and gentlemen. The CNN confirms that indeed Africa is bestowed with minerals. Mother Africa is indeed blessed, just like any other mother who is in this room. Over 30% of the world's natural resources are found in the splendor of Mother Africa. Yet, only 12% is exploited. 12. Are we over-depending on it? Are we over-depending on it? 30 against 12? Well, what causes Africa to be down economically? What brings Africa down economic-wise? We have corrupt leaders. I thought that we were on very different ships with my fellow opponents here. But they are proving to us that they are supporting us, because the first speaker on their side has just said that Nigeria is number 9 in producing oil, yet they don't know where this money goes to. Ladies and gentlemen, this money goes to corrupt leaders. This money goes to bad leadership. This money is taken due to bad leaders who have invaded the country. We overdepend on foreign aid, ladies and gentlemen. It reminds me of a bad joke of milking a thin, unhealthy cow, because 20% of the foreign aid is only directed to us. So must we depend on such a small amount? 20% surely? Can we stoop that low? We know Africa can make leaps. Africa can make strides when we eradicate poor leaders, when we eradicate leaders who eat upon us, when we eradicate leaders who think that they can take money that is meant for development. Overdependence on natural resources. Is Africa really over-depending on natural resources? No. South Africa produces 75% of its energy from uranium. Do you know that? Are we over-depending on it? In case we over-depend on it, it's not an undoing, because energy is used. Energy, South Africa is exporting some of it, helping it to grow economic-wise. Is it an undoing to us? No. Tourism, 10 million last year. A grand amount, ladies and gentlemen, from this one resource called animals, wildlife. It brought 10 million. Well, in case we are over-depending on it, it is not doing any harm. In fact, it is doing good to us. This is Otieno Duncan from the Nyangori Boys High School. Second speaker, opposer side. Thank you.
The proposers have been asked to give an alternative for what we should depend on as African countries, if not our natural resources. The opposers, on the other hand, have been asked to cite other examples of natural resources in Africa that would be of benefit to different countries other than the uranium in South Africa that they've already stated. Proposer number 3, you have 3 minutes to respond.
When I was a baby, I used to think like a baby. When I was a teenager, I used to think like a teenager. Now that I'm grown up and old, I'm thinking like a wise old man. Therefore, I will give you a wise answer to your question. I was simply asked to give other alternatives, of which I have the answer. In the case of China, the way my second proposer just said, they depend on technology, skilled manpower, quality education. Imagine, they don't depend on one thing, but Africans, we overdepend on natural resources. Imagine if we focus on other things. We may have a variety of other things that we may put our focus on. I believe I have answered your question. Thank you for the question. Now, my opposers are speaking about uranium. They're speaking about uranium in South Africa. Now, they just spoke about the 12%. Imagine, he was also speaking about that foreign aid. If Africa was not over-depending on these natural resources, they will not be going for the foreign aid. Most of the African countries go for the foreign aid so that they may mine their natural resources like gold. Like here in Kenya, we went for foreign aid so that we may mine the oil that was discovered in Turkana. Think of it. And to my first point. This overdependence will cripple the economy of the nation. According to OECD, the DRC's exports were worth $7.03 billion US in 2013, making it the 103rd largest exporter in the world. In the world, refined copper accounted for 1/3 of all exports, followed by copper ore 19%, raw copper 7.5%, cobalt 8.8%, cobalt ore 6.9%, and crude petroleum 12%. The country is therefore extremely vulnerable to fluctuation of commodity prices. Think of SDG number 8, decent work and economic growth. Let us imagine if the price of copper declines, what will happen to the nation of DRC Congo? Think of it, my people. What will happen to these people? Where will they go to? And to my second point, land wastage. Naturally, land that has been used for mining cannot be used for any other purpose. For instance, in Lubumbashi in DRC, the copper mines are left ugly, homely, sunken, and naturally destroyed. Therefore, cannot be used for any other useful purposes like farming. Yet agriculture serves 20% of the country's economy. This is according to a research done by Ivan Nyanda of Rutgers University on November 9th, 2015. This disadvantages SDG number 15, life on land. I have been David Chebuche from Vihiga High School. Thank you.
Third opposer, you have 3 minutes to respond to your question.
Today, women and ladies of intellectual have met in this hall. One of us in this intellectual hall doesn't get to know that there are other better means apart from uranium in South Africa. Well, they have gold. Talk about the gold mines that South Africa has. Go to Congo, the Katanga Plateaus. Talk about the titanium that is there. Talk about the rich diamond golds that are there. Come to our own Kenya, area code 254. Talk about the soda ash that is there. And I guarantee you, our dear proposers, you are in a wrecked ship and you should board us soon and very soon. Well, our first proposer just told us that we are in a ship that was made in the days of Abraham. Well, in the house, I guarantee we have geography students. Are they there? We have history students. Are they there? You should probably carbonate this man and know which era he's living in. Because I guarantee you that China is the world's leading exporter of gold. They are not depending on what they call as tech solution. They have gold. If they are leading in gold production, then automatically you must agree with me that China also depends on what we call natural resource. And also, Africa McHugh, we have to copy what they've done because economically wise, China is far worse than us. It is clear to me that natural resources are not the greatest undoing. We have corruption. On a scale of 1 up to 100, Kenyans, sons and daughters of our land, tell me, how corrupt are our leaders between 1 to 100%? How corrupt are they? 100%. Bad leadership. Talk about Congo. Talk about the former South African president. Look at what he did to them. Before he left the power, South Africa was almost running vulnerable because of bad leadership, because of poor leadership, because of corruption, not because of depending on natural resources. And I guarantee you that if you are people of intellectual, if you know that you have got upright upstairs, do not board their ship. It is wrecked. You will soon end up drowning. I've been Vincent Gurema from the splendid Nyangori Boys High School. Thank you.
Proposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
SDG number 1, no poverty. SDG number 3, good health and well-being. SDG number 13, climate. SDG number 15, life on land. A picture can paint 1,000 words. With me, I have a picture. This is a ruin after the mining of copper in DRC Congo, which I believe my judges also have the same picture. Do you think we should continue over-depending on these natural resources? Look at what it has cost us. Look at this. Can this land be reused anywhere? Look at it. Can it be reused anywhere? And if my opposers seem not to understand, I'll leave them with one copy. I have been David Chebuche. Thank you.
Opposers, you have 1 minute to make a final submission.
Mother Africa is crying. Mother Africa is wounded. Our mother is helpless. Our mother is poor. Our mother is in a state that cannot be helped. Why? Yet they are blaming its blessing. Yet they are blaming the natural resources. Mother, I will tell you your enemies. Your enemies are these corrupt leaders. Your enemy is disunity among us African leaders. Your enemy is neocolonialism. Look, we've turned to depending on those countries that are found on the western part of the world. Those are our enemies, Mother. They are killing us slowly. Mother Africa, please do something. I know that natural resource is a blessing to you, and we cannot say that it's a curse. Otieno Duncan, thank you.
Vihiga, Ronald Reagan, the paradox of plenty, well stated, divinations apt. And I want to thank you for doing a very good job for the next speaker. But remember that you also appeared to have obstacles in your presentation because of reading that could send a wrong impression about your mastery of content. Ray Kahai, very good for your eloquence, but it's something very important. The fact that Nigeria is not number 9 in the world cannot be overemphasized. Therefore, it is true that it is number 11 or more than number 11 because we already know about top 10 who are not in Africa. I also want to state the fact that David Chebunche, you answered the question that was posed quite correctly, and you went as far as giving, again, China as a reference. But remember, they had asked to give different other nations that are involved in this, other than the ones that you had stated. But it is good that you mentioned the Kenyan case of foreign dependence, and that is Kenya and Talo. Adrian Alwach from Nyangori, we want to commend you for a rebuttal, and especially against Ronald Reagan in your searches to give the correct information. You appeared well informed and researched, and that's why your facts can be confirmed even here that Nigeria is not number 9. You went as far as giving us stated facts about South Africa, about the use of uranium and many others, which was a bit okay, but we did not see the much use of it that could overturn the issue of a dependence. But it's good that you must have come up with what is actually bedeviling Africa, and it's not over-dependence on natural resources. You mentioned the poverty, you mentioned about poor leadership, same thing that was taken and done by Otieno Duncan, which was a very good cooperation in terms of your argument. That means that you had mastered the topic and you coordinated yourself very well. It is good that Otieno Duncan also reminded our friends that China is not in Africa, but they have nothing else to do but to go outside the countries that are in Africa, because we have only been told here that it's Africa the greatest undoing, because almost all the countries are depending on Africa. So take note of the fact that they were right to choose a country outside Africa.
With a difference of 0.4%, Vihiga High School, the judges awarded you 68.4%. Let's give them a round of applause. Nyangori School, the judges awarded you 68%. Let's give them a round of applause. With that being said, we'd like to congratulate Vihiga High School for being the greater debater in this debate.
Indeed, the debate is over here on stage, but at home, remember to keep our conversation going across all the social media platforms with the hashtag GDC for SDGs. Thank you for staying with us. I have been your host, Esperanza Kapanga.
And I am Chris Boru. Don't touch that dial.